The Church of St. Francis stands where there was once an oratory consecrated to St. Niccolo, which was externally linked to the Pocalidis castle, the embattled and turreted building which used to be a fortress and controlled the nearby harbour in the lower part of the town.
In 1252, the new Bishop of Lodi, Bongiovanni Fissaraga, was ordered by Pope Innocenzo IV to give the Church of St. Nicolò its houses and gardens to the conventional friars. Later, as Antonio Fissaraga, a scion of a famous family in Lodi, had no heirs, he decided to have a bigger church built in honor of Saint Francesco.
The friars were able to complete the building of the new church in just 10 years, between 1280 and 1290, thanks to the financial support of the Guelph Fissaraga family in 1290. Bishop Anne Bongiovanni was the first to be buried in the church.
St. Francis, which was built in a Romanesque Gothic style, has an incomplete terracotta brick facade, without the fastigium of the saddle roof, and perhaps the building was stopped because of the death or the imprisonment of Antonio Fissaraga. The facade is divided by two great applied columns into three parts, and is characterized by two double-splay open lancet windows, a feature typical of Lodi, chosen to make the front structure lighter. In the centre there is a pointed prothero which was added in the 15th century, above the typical rose window in red Verona marble.
The Latin cross-shaped interior with three naves shows the late Romanesque style in the strength of the pillars and the Gothic style in the lancet arches of the vaults. You can still see the best painting expedition from Lodi, which includes paintings from the 14th century. This will help a local painting to flourish. The church became really important with the conventual friars minor and was the center of an intense spiritual life. Lodi's most renowned families were honored with the privilege of burying their dead in the church. You can still see the tombs of the Fissaraga, Modignani, Di Limene families. In 1976, the poet Ada Negri, who had often written about the spiritual charm of the church, was buried here.
In the 14th and 15th centuries, when the minor observance started to take care of the church, it was altered and lost its original unity of style. Above all, in the left aisle, some chapels were decorated with frescoes, marbles and plasters according to the Baroque canons of the time. The windows with two lights which lit the apse were closed, and the choir was painted by Sebastiano Galeotti, with the glory of San Francesco in the 18th century.
As it had happened to their predecessors, the minor observance had to leave Lodi, as well as St. Francis during the Napoleonic suppression in 1810. The church was annexed to the parish of St. Salvatore of Carmine, and a local priest was entrusted with it. In 1842, the church was entrusted to the Barnabite Fathers, order of clerics regular of St. Paul, as a perpetual use for their offices, in free and full usufruct, with all the charges of maintenance and service.
The Barnabite Fathers had been in Lodi since 1605 in the convent on the church of San Giovanni al Vigni, built using the plan by the Barnabite father Gian Ambrogio Mazenta, which will be changed into the present local theatre. The Barnabite Fathers were involved in the Napoleonic suppression in 1810 and came back to Lodi in 1832, this time in the convent of St. Francis, offered free by the town council. But it was not easy to serve the church, which was still in the hands of the parish priest of the Church of Carmany. The negotiations were repeated in 1837 and 1842, when at least the deed was drawn up. But the Barnabite fathers had to force the doors open in order to get into the church, because the parish priest had hidden the keys and were refusing to pass them over.
The church was in a very bad condition, and restorations started quickly to get it back to its previous splendor. The paintings on some columns were restored. The wooden molding which ran all over the church was removed altogether, with a crumbling choir and some chapels. The roof was rebuilt. But some jobs were unfinished. The restorations started again under the direction of Professor Pinin Brambilla Barcelon, who intervened on the precious frescoes of the walls and the vaults from 1960.
Among them is the votive fresco of Madonna with the Child, which goes back to the end of the 14th century, also called Ada Negri's Madonna because it was her favourite painting, and is mentioned in the autobiographical novel Morning Star, written in 1921.
In a fresco placed above Antonio Fizzaraga's tomb, he is shown offering the child the model of the new church of St. Francis, while two patron saints, St. Francis of Assisi and St. Nicholas of Bari, are witnessing his gift.
Among the chapels of the church, the Chapel of St. Bernardine from Siena is the most symbolic. It was frescoed by Gian Giacomo from Lodi in 1477 and was commissioned by the De Bononis, a noble local family. On the wall you can see very precious works. There are 22 panels which represent the cycle of St. Bernardine's life. Every scene is described by a caption in Latin Gothic characters. Originally, the walls were part of the tower in the Procalodis Castle, which was later changed into the new church tower. When the hospital was built, the tower was cut short, and 20 years later it was changed into a chapel. The ancient lighthouse on Gerundio Lake was fitted and became the new church tower. It still stands as a massive bell tower in the area of the nearby college.
In the 17th century, in San Giovanni alle Vigne, the Barnabite fathers started the so-called superior studies, philosophy, theology, and morals, and later added the inferior courses, grammar, humanity, and rhetoric. In 1833, the fathers went back to Lodi, settled in the present building, and resumed their teaching of classical subjects. In 1970s, new subjects were added in the Scientific and Language School of St. Francis till 1985, later followed by a primary school, a nursery school, and an infant school.
Inside the college you can find a library with over 6,000 books, music archives with more than 23,000 scores, and the Natural Science Museum. The museum was established around 1833 when the college was founded. Started with a didactic aim, and year after year, thanks to the intelligent search for more items, it has become bigger and bigger, and now has 60,000 items together with a collection of 980 scientific instruments.
Many famous people were educated in the College of St. Francis, which is still important for Lodi and its area. The Church of St. Francis is also still important, and thanks to the architecture of its facade, it is now one of the symbols of the city of Lodi.
Okay.
I can't do it so slow, hang on. It's really hard to speak so slow. Okay,
Più veloce?
that's hard. Okay. Smile. I'm being filmed.
Start again.
Paintings from the 12th. Sorry, I did it wrong. I'll go again.
Perché è una cosa naturale. Perché è l'inizio di una frase.
I can't say it. What is it? Limeni. Okay, shall I start again?
Among the chapels of the Church of the again.
The church became really important with the conventual friar of Marley. I can't do it. It's too slow. Okay.